Hello everyone and welcome back. In this video I'm going to talk to you about the Marchman Act, and this video would also actually apply to guardianship too. So we've had calls from folks in the past who decided to either file their own Marchman Act, which I've said you can do. I think it's a very difficult road to travel on, but you can, or they hired a lawyer who doesn't specialize in doing this kind of work, and then things went south very quickly. And what they tell us is, well, the Marchman Act doesn't work. I've done it a bunch of times. It never seems to work. Okay, well, when you say it doesn't work, what does that actually mean? And sort of the underlying theme seems to be, well, we got it granted, and then, my loved one left treatment. Or I got it granted, and, he got out of treatment and he relapsed. So let's talk about that, because I think that some of the concerns are valid, and I want to address those, because obviously when you come to ask, whether it's for Marchman Act or guardianship, or even some of the Baker Act cases we handle, we appreciate the fact it's a serious commitment of time, energy, and obviously money. So look, first of all, our mission is to save families, okay? And we don't do anything else. And I operate primarily in two arenas, Marchman Act and guardianship. And I also handle Baker Act cases when people have been illegally detained. But we also use the Baker Act when we need somebody, placed in a place of safety very, very quickly. We don't have time to run to court. So I only do this, right? My team only does this. I'm not doing anything else. So this is our specialty. It's our mission. And so I want you to know that right up front. Second of all, look, the Marchman Act and guardianship are vehicles, right? Legal vehicles to get somebody into treatment and keep them there long enough. And so when people tell me, well, treatment doesn't work, the Marchman Act doesn't work, what we tend to uncover is that somebody has been to multiple treatment centers and they've never stayed long enough. And when I say long enough, I will tell you that our typical Marchman Act case goes from anywhere from 3 months to 9 months. I had one instance where I had a young man who I had in treatment under a Marchman Act for 2 years. And every 90 days, I went in and I re-upped it, I extended it, got a court order to keep him in treatment longer. And so one of the things that we hear is, well, he went for 10 days, he went for 30 days, and then he left, or he did, or whatever. And so, look, here's the deal. When you have been dealing with somebody who has a behavioral health issue that's been going on for 5 years, 10 years, and sometimes even longer, it is simply not realistic to expect them to really start making any progress in anything less than 90 days. Anything less than 90 days, in our experience, honestly, I think is an exercise in futility and frustration for your loved one and for your family. You got to do 90 days, absolute minimum. 6 months is much better. And so if you do the first 90 days under the Marchman Act, then extend it, get another 90 days. And then after that, your loved one's got to work some kind of aftercare program. Going to AA, getting a sponsor, working the 12 steps, continuing to seek some type of outpatient clinical services. I mean, the Marchman Act and even guardianships are certain. It's not a magic wand that we're waving here and like, oh, okay, they're fixed, they're healed, they're in recovery. It doesn't work. Okay, these are vehicles to get your loved one into treatment and keep them there long enough, and not just long enough, but long enough in the clinically appropriate facility. So when you call us and you speak to either Brittany or Rachel, who run our intake department, you're going to spend quite a bit of time with them just asking you a bunch of questions to figure out what's really going on here, right? I mean, we call it, my wife and I have a family full of doctors. We call it triaging the case. We need to know what's really going on here. What's worked, what hasn't, how long has this been going on for, what's the drug of choice, what's the mental health diagnosis, all of these things, okay, so that we can figure out what's the best option for you and your loved one and your family. And obviously, if you need to schedule a legal strategy session with one of the lawyers, no problem. I got 3 on staff, soon to be 4. You can certainly speak to one of us. But the whole point of using Marchman Act and guardianship is to get somebody into treatment and keep them there long enough in the clinically appropriate facility. Now, sometimes that facility can change. Sometimes they might do residential at one facility and PHP somewhere else, and maybe they do outpatient somewhere else. No problem. we go back into court, we modify the court order, and so that way, if there's an issue, we can run back to see the judge. Now, some of the time, what I'm hearing is, well, he left treatment, so the Marchman Act doesn't work. Look, what makes the Marchman Act and Guardianship work is the fact that they can be enforced. What does that mean? It means that if your loved one has been ordered into treatment and they don't stay, or they don't comply, or they don't do what needs to be done, they don't participate, whatever the case is, it means I can bring them back into court and seek relief. What does that mean? Well, it means they can be sanctioned, right? Maybe I've had instances where a judge said, okay, we're 30 days in, I'm going to re-up the order, I'm going to modify this thing, it's another 90 days starting from now. I've seen judges who said, maybe you just need a weekend in the county jail so that you understand that we're serious here. This is a court order, which means that compliance is not optional. It's mandatory. And so what makes Marchman and Guardianship work is the fact they can be enforced. They can be enforced. And obviously, if you're not going to allow us to enforce the court order, and I'm not saying we have to, put them in jail right out of the gate, but if you're not going to allow us to enforce a court order for you so your loved one knows that you are serious, and remember, their brain has been kidnapped, so you can't expect them to, at least, for the first 90 days to understand how serious the situation is, because they think there's nothing wrong with them, by the way, but you already know that, right? It's the enforceability, being able to bring them back into court and say, my loved one, the judge is telling you, you got to do this, okay, by hook or by crook. You're doing it because we can't continue like this. You cannot continue to live like this. We cannot continue to live like this. And so when I hear that these things, Marchman Act and Guardianship don't work, it's typically, well, they went to the appropriate facility and nobody went to enforce the court order. Okay, we do that pretty consistently where, when somebody's non-compliant, we're going back into court. And so if you can keep your loved one in treatment, in the right facility for long enough, you're on the path to recovery. But it's going to take time. I tell every family that this is a year-long program. You don't have to hire me for a year, but expect the recovery process to take a year. Your loved one's been sick 5, 10, 15, 20 years. It's a year. It's a year-long program for them to develop the skill set, recover, and it's a year-long program so that you can recover, your family can recover. But you have to enforce the court order. You have to be committed to making sure your loved one stays in treatment. And when you do, that's when the miracle really happens. And that's amazing for us to see. That's why we get out of bed every morning. This is what motivates me to make these videos so that you can figure out if this is something you want to do for your family. So I appreciate you tuning in. Thank you. I'm grateful that you take time to listen for now. 8 minutes for me waffling on here, but this is important stuff. If you liked the video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up, and please subscribe to the channel. I try to give you a video just about every day of the week and on the weekends too. And with that said, thanks for tuning in, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.